I'm looking forward to welcoming Byron McClure to have a discussion amongst uniters, amongst Americans, amongst educators, amongst young people, if you're out there, young people, amongst all of us about how we can learn from the field of social and emotional learning from a nationally certified counselor in social and emotional learning, how we can learn from Byron about the current challenges in our own culture, in our lives, the ways in which we have found ourselves at this low point in our national history. Let's recognize that we can actually have the strategies and the skills and the power and the strength and the faith to overcome them. That's what I'm hoping Byron will help us learn about today. So I'm getting waves, but I don't see Byron joining. I'm worried that I'm messing this up and not doing it right, but let's see if I can get Byron to come on board. So for the oh, there he is.
Hello. Can you
hear
hear
me?
We're on.
We're on.
Can you hear me?
All right.
I can hear you.
Take off my glasses and not worry so much about whether I'm doing this right. Welcome, Byron. Good to have you.
I am excited to be here with none other than Tim Shriver. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to be here with none other than Byron McClure. So Byron, let's get right into it. Tell us, give people a little bit of your story, how you got into the work you're doing. And I just want to say before you start that when you look at your bio on your site, it has something that I think is extraordinary, especially for men, which is that you start out by saying, I'm a nationally certified school counselor. And then most men, I'm going to say it this way, most men would then go on to list where they went to school and who they studied with and what they wrote their PhD dissertation on. The next thing on your list is that you're a father, a brother, an uncle, a family member. So tell us how you get to the point in your life as a young man, as a professional man, where you are as proud of your relationships as you are of your credentials.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's by design. And I'll talk a lot about things being intentional and by design. But, yes, I am a nationally certified school psychologist, which is a big thing there. But I'm also many other things as well. No, you know what's funny? As we were setting this up, of course, it's National School Counselor Week. Shout out to all the school counselors. But it's this thing in our field where we are often mistaken. I wouldn't want to be mistaken for anybody else other than school counselors. And shout out to all the school counselors who are very important to also meeting the needs of our children. But yeah, so as a school psychologist, yes, that's what I do. But I'm also a father, a brother, a cousin, an uncle. I'm a Black man in America, and I can't be a school psychologist without bringing my authentic self, without affirming my culture, my identity, my beliefs, my values in everything that I do. And that's important because not only do I carry that, but that's something that I genuinely believe that all our students should also be able to carry as well. I'm just somebody who is focused on improving outcomes for Black youth, for youth who look like me. I can go on and on about all my professional credentials, but at the core of what I do, of what I've purposed to do, is to uplift my community, the Black community, and to improve outcomes. It goes without saying that as a Black man in America, there's so many paths that I could have gone down. But my father always instilled in me values you will never be successful if you don't uplift the rest of your community. And so I chose the vehicle through school psychology to accomplish that goal.
It's interesting you say that part about helping others. I was with a group of volunteers just last weekend who were volunteers for the Special Olympics movement, young high school students. And I asked them why they don't get discouraged with, all the challenges of Zoom and separation and all the challenges they're facing. And they said, I guess exactly what your dad said to you. They said, when we give back, we feel inspired and excited and positive. And I think it's a lesson, people are wondering what they can do in the country right now. What can I do to, we're such a mess. Even small ways in which we give back to one another, even small acts of generosity, however we can find our way to do them. I think can sometimes lift our spirits much more than we might imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. And my way of doing that has been through the field of psychology, of mental health. I see it as a vehicle of connecting people, of healing trauma, of healing hurt, and as a path forward.
So Byron, so I want people to know your site. You've created a movement called 6 Minute SEL.
Yes.
I think the site is connectforsel.com, if I'm not mistaken. Am I getting it right?
Lessons, yeah, close. Lessons for
Oh,
SEL. Yep, lessonsforsel.com.
Lessonsforsel.com. I'll repeat that over and over again so I get it right. But I spent some time on the site, and you and I've gone through your training, which I'm very grateful for.
Yes, yes.
And you've got lessons in there about things that people think of as controversial. You've got lessons in there about Black Lives Matter. You've got lessons in there about conflict resolution. You've got lessons in there about listening and empathy. You've got lessons in there about overcoming racism. But none of it, as far as I can tell, puts anybody down, right? I mean, yes, you challenge schools to remove structural racism, institutionalize racism, all those kinds of things that create inequalities. But you're teaching us right in this moment of conflict, as far as I can tell, how we can resolve conflict peacefully and get to equity without demonizing and contempt. Am I close to getting it?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why I created my platform, Lessons for SEL. Shout out to, all of the other SEL providers and people creating curriculums, but I saw a void, in particular around Black and Brown youth. And I wanted to develop resources that centered cultural awareness, that was affirming to our experience. That's who I am. And I'm bringing my full self to everything that I do. I can't separate that. And I want children to be able to do the same thing. Again, my focus has been on racial equity, justice, and culturally affirming practices. And so in all of my lessons, that's at the core as part of social emotional learning, to say, hey, yes, we have differences. Yes, we have different values, but how can we still work collaboratively? How can I have an understanding of who I am and still meet you where you are? How can I develop empathy to understand what other people are going through? Sam, my experience could be very different from yours and vice versa. That doesn't mean we have to hate each other. That doesn't mean we have to put each other down. What it means to me is that we can bring those differences together to creatively problem solve, which is powerful. In my work, I've been fortunate to lead some redesign work at Anacostia High School, and we have a practice. It's this human-centered design way of thinking. And with that, we are bringing different people, their experience, who they are. Don't shy away from that. And breaking down these systems of oppression and redesigning innovative, creative solutions.
The way you're describing this, I'm hoping, Byron, you can just give us a quick snapshot of a real life lesson. So let's say we have people in this country who are big supporters of Black Lives Matter and people who are skeptical or have doubts or whatever. Help us to see how you would introduce, because there is a lesson on your site. So I'm teasing this. I hope people will go and check it out. There's a video lesson. It's short, but help if I'm in 6th grade or I'm a teacher, how do I teach about racial justice and equity in the way in which you've suggested makes the most sense? Give me a quick lesson. Imagine I'm a 6th grade teacher or a 6th grade or an 8th grade student.
One of the things that I purpose to do is to create short video lessons, to take these complex concepts and break them down in a manageable format through short YouTube videos. And we release them every Sunday, every week. And the most recent one, shout out to Black Lives Matter at School. It was a video on how to introduce this concept in school. And one of the ways how I do it is encouraging people to bring your unique experiences to the table. What are your thoughts of racial justice? What does this mean? So going through definitions, I'm going through, okay, this is what racial justice is. This is what equity is. What does this mean to you? It's one thing for us to just look at like a dictionary definition, but it's another thing to bring your experiences, your lived, what you've been through to the table, and then have a conversation about it. And one of the things I purpose through these YouTube videos, these short lessons, is to simply engage in discussions. What does Black Lives Matter mean to you? What is an issue that's important to you? For me, it's being a Black man in America. It's ending disproportionate practices. It's ending the school to prison pipeline. It's all these different issues. And likewise, what's important to you? What can you bring to the table? There are so many different issues that so many different people can fight for. How can we come to the table, have a conversation about it, and then come up with solutions? And that's one thing that I've done through those videos.
Byron, because this is what I hear. I spent a lot of time with people on both sides of the aisle, right? And that we're the call to unite. We're trying to find a new consciousness. That sounds heavy, but we're trying to find a new way of seeing one another. That's our journey right now. Because our belief is we cannot solve problems of the whole.
Right.
Problems like justice, problems like education, challenges like health. We can't solve problems. These are problems of the whole unless we bring people together.
Yes.
So what I hear from some folks is, well, wait a second. Black Lives Matter, that's all about hating people who aren't people of color. Answer that, because I think it's important. I mean, I hate to say it, but that question's out there. People don't.
It is. No, that's a fact. And I start the video out in the first 30 seconds saying that
I want you to say this.
Yes, it doesn't mean that anybody else's life is valued less. That's not what Black Lives Matter is saying.
Amen.
It's not saying, look,
so difficult for people, but I know it, anyway.
No, it's important to say it does not mean that this group or that group, that your life matters any less. What it means is, look at my face, my skin. I am a Black man. What it is saying is that my life has value. Your life has value. How can we recognize the value in each other? How can we recognize the innate strengths? I focus on utilizing the strength-based approach all the time in my work. How can we utilize each other's strengths, our identities, our beliefs to uplift one another together? It's tough. It's tough. But that's how I start that video.
But you just said something, yes. So thank you for saying that. And I hope people hear this. I know maybe a lot of the people listening are already, maybe they're leaning progressive or they're leaning towards education. So this is not new to them, but share this story, because remember, we're living in a divided time where the other side, whatever side you're on, the other side doesn't understand you.
Yeah.
And Byron is preaching. I shouldn't say preaching, teaching.
No, preaching. My dad's a preacher.
Okay,
so,
that's right.
Look, my dad's a preacher, so it's in me. Chris
obviously
talks about his pedagogy.
But you're preaching a strengths-based approach. You just dropped that in there, a strengths-based approach, which, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, means that we're not going to focus on our weaknesses, our ills. We're going to focus on what we can contribute, the positive things we can bring to the table, the good things we can accomplish, not because we're perfect or not because we haven't made mistakes or not because there aren't real problems and pain points. No, so that we can overcome those with the strengths we can use together.
Absolutely. And I have this saying to where we have to shift from what's wrong to what's strong. And that's in everything that we do. We have for so long, especially in the field of psychology and mental health, focused on the deficits of people. We focused on what's innately wrong with people. And the current state of our nation is so deeply divided because we're focusing on the problems of the other side, on the issues, and that's plaguing us. So my focus, especially in the schools and my work with my lessons and my curriculum, is on shifting the mindset from what's wrong, from that deficit-based approach, to what are the strengths? What do you do right? What are your top 5 strengths? One of my top 5 strengths is a maximizer, maximizing the potential in people. Yeah. And if we operated from that approach, man, magic can happen.
So I think people can tell. First of all, I'm doing this live standing up because I knew I was going to have so much energy I wasn't going to get to town. So people are maybe wondering why I'm moving around so much. I just knew I was going to be fired up for this discussion, and I appreciate it so much, Byron. I hope people will go to the site. I hope people will join you in celebrating school counselors, join you in celebrating school psychologists. Shout outs to the other SEL educators, Black Lives Matter for Schools.
Yes.
Folks are my colleagues at Castle who work so hard to gather the best in SEL and make it available to teachers. That's another great website. I want to respect people's time, though, and ask maybe that we come to a closure. But I want to ask you maybe to close and help us with the tough question. If you read the paper today, and I'm not suggesting we should, I'm on a news fast most of the time. But if you read the paper, it seems like there are people on the other side that are just, and I'm just saying the other side. I'm not saying which side I'm on. People are saying there are people on the other side who are just too bad, too problematic to work with. What's the strong approach to that moment when you say, I'll work with almost anybody, but not those people?
Yeah, and so one thing that we have to recognize is that that's a very tough question for a number of reasons. One of the reasons it's tough, especially I'll speak from my point of view as a Black man in America, when you consider the history of oppression, of systematic oppression that has happened, that's been pervasive, that has prevented Black people from experiencing wealth, from being able to get jobs, from housing discrimination. That's tough, especially the last 4 years, to be able to say, you know what, we're going to forget all of those things and we can unite. Shout out to Costa Unite, right? That's a tough thing to ask for people to do. So how I answer that question, there has to be a reckoning in the sense of we people broadly must accept what has happened. We must call it out. Whenever I present or speak, I said we have to name what has happened so that we can not shy away from it. We can't run away from it. We must accept in order to address it, to repair the harm that has been done, and then move forward. I'm a strong believer in restorative practices. A tenet of restorative practices is to repair instances of harm, focus on relationship building, to focus on culture, to enhance the community. We take those same practices to this approach around uniting. We have to repair harm that has been done first. There must be radical healing for communities of people, especially communities of color that has been hurt. People are hurting. Across the board on both sides. So there must be a radical call of healing. Really quick, shout out to Dr. Celeste Malone. She just became the National Association of School Psychologists president-elect. I don't want to give away her platform, but I'll just broadly say that there must be radical healing across the country for anybody to be able to move forward. A lot of my work has focused not only on this radical healing, but on empathy. And it must begin with naming the issues, not being afraid to say, hey, this is systemic oppression. This is systemic racism. This is how it's showing up in my practices. This is how it's showing up in my institution. And then address those policies, address those practices so that we can begin reconciliation and adequately focus on healing to move this country forward.
I think it's such an important point, Byron, and I just want to underscore, because sometimes people say to me, uniting means forgetting. No, it doesn't mean forgetting.
No.
Uniting doesn't mean not telling the truth. Uniting doesn't mean not standing up for principle. Uniting doesn't mean excusing racism, hatred, violence. It doesn't mean sweeping things under the carpet. No, 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 and no. That's not the vision we have as uniters. We have a vision, however, that doesn't end with the process of telling the truth. It uses the truth, uses principle, uses empathy, uses understanding in order to transform the conditions that created the division, the hatred, the violence, and whatever other ills are there. I think of it sometimes almost like the process of grieving. You know, you can't sweep it under the carpet when you're in pain. Anybody that tries to do that, it's a recipe for disaster. That's not what uniting is. Uniting is not sweeping things under the carpet. Uniting is telling the truth so that we can come to a common truth. Maybe
Absolutely. Absolutely. I see several
thank
people.
You for that.
Yeah,
And I want to encourage people. There's good lessons on there on conflict, on what to do in conflict, how to manage it, how to address truth telling. There's good discussions about restorative practices. Many of you may know about restorative practices that are being used instead of retaliatory or discriminatory or retributive practices, which so much of our discipline, the way I was trained as an educator, was all about this is what you did, this is the punishment. That's out of date, and the social emotional learning field is about restoring people to health by telling the truth, by naming the wrong, by overcoming it through processes of healing and restoration. So, we've got a lot of work that you're doing, Byron, that I think is necessary, not just for the kids in Anacostia, not just for your own mission, but for our country. And I want to just thank you for doing the work you're doing. But I also want to encourage people to share the work you're doing well beyond the schools and well beyond these communities, because it's important for all of us.
Absolutely. And thank you for this conversation. I hope it's just a start. If anyone is interested in checking out some more of our resources, you can visit www.lessonsforsel.com. Our YouTube video lessons are free. You can follow us on social media, Lessons for SEL. Our YouTube channel is Lessons for SEL. And yeah, I'd love to hear how you all are using the videos.
Lessonsforsel.com. You like me, everybody that got to watch this gets a glimpse into an emerging and an already powerful American transformer, an American healer, an American justice leader, a great American. And maybe the best compliment from me, at least, would be an American educator.
Wow.
Thank you,
Bob. I don't take that lightly. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So grateful.
All right. Take care.
Yeah. Bye-bye.